Life is full of unexpected twists and turns. And sometimes, the hardest battles we fight are within ourselves. Today, we share the story of Emma Harris, a young woman who faced rejection from the very people she longed to impress, her family. Told that her dreams were worthless, Emma set out on a journey to find her true value, proving that the strength to succeed comes from within. This is a story of perseverance, self-belief, and the power of music. Don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories to begin today's journey with us. I grew up in a small, peaceful suburban town in Ohio, where everything appeared idyllic from the outside. The white picket fences, the neatly trimmed lawns, and the quiet streets seemed to reflect the perfect middle-class life. My parents, Sarah and Thomas, were well respected in the community. My mother, Sarah, was a schoolteacher who had dedicated years to nurturing young minds, while my father, Thomas, worked at a local firm, quietly leading an ordinary life. On the surface, we were the kind of family that everyone admired, well-mannered, well-educated, and seemingly content. But inside our home, it was a different story altogether. I was the youngest in the family, and from a very young age, I had an intense passion for music. It wasn't something I chose to do, it was something I was born with. My love for the piano, for the art of creating melodies that could touch the soul, was something that felt as natural to me as breathing. I didn't just play the piano, I became the music. I won local competitions, took private lessons with some of the best teachers in the area, and even caught the attention of my high school music teacher, who would often say I was a natural talent. But despite my accomplishments, my parents didn't see music as a viable future. They saw it as a hobby, a fleeting interest that would never amount to anything substantial. They insisted that I focus on something more practical. My mother often told me, "Music is a nice dream, but you need to face reality. You can't make a living out of something like that." When it came time to choose my path after high school, the pressure mounted. I had received several scholarship offers from prestigious music schools, but my parents, especially my mother, made it clear that they didn't think music was a realistic career. They wanted me to choose something that would guarantee financial stability, something that would earn me respect in the world. "Do you really think you can support yourself with music?" my mother would ask, her voice laced with both concern and doubt. I wanted to stand up for my passion, to follow my heart, but I wasn't prepared to sever ties with my family, to disappoint them. So, I enrolled at a local public university, majoring in music. The school was a compromise, a middle ground between my dreams and their wishes. I tried to convince myself it was the right choice, but deep inside, I knew it wasn't what I truly wanted. As I settled into university life, I realized how little my family understood about what music meant to me. I had always felt like an outsider in our home, someone who was constantly striving to be seen, to be heard. My sister, Olivia, was everything my parents had ever wanted. She was smart, ambitious, and driven. Olivia was the perfect child. She had been selected as the valedictorian of her high school class and had just been accepted into one of the most prestigious medical schools in the state. My parents couldn't have been more proud of her. At every family gathering, they spoke of Olivia's accomplishments with an almost reverential tone, while I sat silently in the background. "Olivia will become a doctor and bring honor to our family," my mother would say, a glint of pride in her eyes. "She's going to be someone special." Olivia's life seemed effortless, as though success flowed naturally to her. She didn't have to work hard for anything. Everything came easily, and my parents showered her with attention and love. As for me, I was left to figure things out on my own. When I graduated from high school, they didn't offer to pay for my college tuition. They assumed I could handle it myself. So, I did. I worked 2 jobs, one as a waitress at a local cafe and the other performing at a jazz bar downtown. I made enough to cover my living expenses and tuition, but barely. I often spent sleepless nights working on my music, rehearsing for hours, hoping to earn enough to pay the bills. Yet, there were times when I found myself staring at the stack of unpaid bills on my desk, anxiety gnawing at my stomach. One evening, as I sat at my desk, preparing for another long night of practice. I glanced at the clock. The semester was nearly over, and the deadline for next semester's tuition was fast approaching. I knew I was short on money. The pandemic had affected the cafe's hours, and I had lost some of my shifts. I couldn't do this on my own anymore. Maybe it was time to ask my parents for help. But asking for help felt like admitting defeat. I had never asked them for anything before. Not once in my life. That night, my parents were hosting a dinner to celebrate Olivia's success. She had just been accepted into the medical school of her dreams. And my mother had been planning this dinner for days. It was all about Olivia, of course. The table was set with her favorite food, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and chocolate cake, and a handmade banner that read, "Congratulations on medical school." I sat down at the dinner table, trying to push my worries aside. I smiled at Olivia, who was dressed in a new designer dress, and said, "Congratulations." My heart ached as I said the words, but I forced a smile. I had always been the quiet one, the one who stayed in the background while my parents lavished attention on Olivia. Tonight, it seemed like nothing had changed. As the dinner continued, the conversation flowed effortlessly around me. Olivia talked about her new medical school experiences, about the challenges of the first day of classes. "I had an anatomy class," she said, "and it was really tough. But my professor said my questions showed excellent insight." My mother nodded enthusiastically, clearly proud. I sat there, listening to the conversation, feeling like a ghost in the room. I wanted to say something, to ask for help, but the words seemed stuck in my throat. How could I bring up the fact that I was struggling to make ends meet? That I needed $2 for my tuition and I had no way to get it? It felt small in comparison to everything Olivia had achieved. My self-doubt kept me silent. As the evening continued, I found myself lost in my thoughts, barely hearing the conversation swirling around me. My parents were so focused on Olivia, so consumed by her success, that it felt like they had forgotten about me. Or maybe they never truly saw me at all, not for who I was, not for what I wanted to become. I had always tried to please them, to meet their expectations, but no matter what I did, it felt like I was invisible in their eyes. Tonight, I realized just how deep that invisibility ran. Olivia's voice cut through my thoughts. "I promise I'll become a respectable doctor and make the family proud," she said, her tone filled with youthful certainty. My mother reached over to touch her cheek, her eyes glistening with pride. "That's my girl," she said softly, almost reverently. I felt a wave of bitterness rise in my chest, but I quickly pushed it down. Olivia had always been the golden child, and I had always been the one left in the shadows. How could I even begin to compete with that? I had never asked for anything from my parents. I had always worked hard, always tried to be independent. But the truth was, I was tired of struggling on my own, tired of feeling like I was chasing a dream that no one believed in. My eyes flicked to the bill in my pocket, and my heart sank. The due date for my tuition was drawing near, and I didn't have enough money to cover it. My shifts at the cafe had been cut because of the pandemic, and my savings were running dry. I had tried to find other ways to make up the difference, but it seemed like every door was closed. Maybe, just this once, I could ask my parents for help. Maybe, just this once, they would see me, not as the failure they always assumed I was, but as the person I had always tried to be. As the meal progressed, I kept listening to Olivia and my mother talk, their voices like a distant hum in the background. My father, Thomas, sat quietly, sipping his wine, his attention divided between his newspaper and the conversation. I couldn't help but notice how detached he seemed. He was always quiet, always letting my mother take the reins. In this family, it was clear that my mother had the final say. Finally, I took a deep breath and stood up from the table. The conversation paused for a moment, and all eyes turned to me. I felt a rush of nervousness flood through me, my heart racing in my chest. This was it. This was the moment I had been dreading. I had never asked for help before, never wanted to seem weak in their eyes. But now, I didn't have a choice. I need to talk to you both about something. I began, my voice shaking slightly. My mother's smile faltered, and Olivia looked up from her plate. What's wrong, Emma? My mother asked, her voice laced with concern. I could see the disapproval in her eyes, the impatience she always had for me. I pressed on, knowing that if I didn't say it now, I never would. It's about next semester's tuition, I said, pulling the bill from my pocket. I'm short $2. My shifts at the cafe have been cut, and I'm trying to find another job. But there's nothing available right now. I've always handled things on my own, but this time, I can't do it. I watched as my mother's face darkened. She put down her fork and folded her hands in front of her. Tuition again, she muttered, her voice heavy with disappointment. You've always managed on your own, haven't you? Isn't that the path you chose? I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. But I continued, it's not that simple this time. Mom, I've always worked hard, and I've never asked for help. But now, I just can't do it by myself. Emma, my mother said, her voice becoming cold, when you chose music, we knew this would happen. We warned you that it wasn't a practical career. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it. The words cut deep. I had always known my parents didn't support my choice. But hearing them say it so plainly made me feel small. They didn't see my passion. They didn't understand the sacrifices I had made. Music is my passion, I said, my voice trembling, and I've never asked for anything before. I just need help, just this once. At that moment, Olivia's phone buzzed on the table, interrupting the tension that hung in the air. She picked it up quickly, her face lighting up as she read the message. It's from the university, she said, her voice filled with excitement. It's about my tuition payment. It's all been taken care of. The words stung like a slap to the face. My gaze shifted to the screen of Olivia's phone, and I saw the message. Full tuition payment completed. I felt a wave of anger rush over me, my fists clenching at my sides. How could they pay for Olivia's tuition without a second thought, while I was left here struggling to make ends meet? Of course, we paid for your tuition, my mother said, almost as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Medical school is an investment in the future. It's not the same as music. The pain in my chest grew sharper. I felt the sting of my mother's words, each one a reminder of how little they thought of me. My voice wavered as I asked, why, Mom? Why only Olivia? My mother's eyes hardened. Olivia has a future, Emma. Becoming a doctor will bring honor to the family. There's no value in spending money on you. Her words pierced me like a knife. I had always felt like the invisible child. But now, I realized just how deep that feeling ran. To them, I was nothing more than a dreamer. Someone who could never measure up to Olivia's success. I looked at my father, hoping for some sign of support. But he remained silent, his gaze fixed on his wine glass. Olivia, too, had a smug expression on her face. She picked up her phone and texted someone, oblivious to the tension in the room. I felt my heart break as I realized just how little they cared about me. I slowly stood up, my legs shaking. The room seemed to close in on me, the weight of their rejection unbearable. I understand, I whispered, my voice breaking. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the room, my heart heavy with sorrow. As I climbed the stairs to my room, the weight of my mother's words hung heavy in the air. There's no value in spending money on you. The sting of those words pierced deeper with each step I took. The house felt suffocating, as though the walls were closing in on me. And I couldn't breathe. I had always known my parents didn't truly understand me. But to hear them say it so blatantly, it shattered something inside me. I entered my room, my sanctuary, the one place where I could still feel like myself. I glanced around, the familiar sight of my piano in the corner, the shelves lined with trophies from music competitions, and the certificates on the walls that celebrated my achievements. Yet, there was something missing, something that I had longed for but could never find in this house. Love, acceptance, validation. All I had ever wanted was for them to believe in me. To see me for who I was. Not just as a disappointment in their eyes. I walked to my closet, staring at the clothes I had accumulated over the years. The room felt so silent, so still, like it was waiting for something to happen. But what? I wasn't sure anymore. My hands shook as I pulled out a large backpack. The kind I used for travel. It was time. I had been thinking about this for weeks. Months even. The idea of leaving was terrifying. But the truth was, I had nothing left to lose. My parents had made it clear where I stood in their eyes. And I wasn't going to keep fighting for their approval anymore. I packed quickly, stuffing the essentials into the bag. A few clothes, toiletries, and most importantly, my piano sheet music. Music was the only thing that had ever truly been mine. The only part of my life that had never been dictated by their expectations. I hesitated for a moment, my fingers brushing over the certificates on the wall. But then I turned away. There was no place for me here anymore. The rain had begun to fall outside, tapping softly against the window. It was as if the world itself was mourning what I was about to do. I stood in the middle of the room, taking one last look at the space that had once been my childhood home. There were no family photos on the walls, only awards and achievements that had never really been mine. In that moment, I realized that I was leaving not just a house, but an entire version of myself that I had tried to hold on to for far too long. I opened the door, slipping out quietly, making sure not to disturb anyone. The sounds of laughter from downstairs, Olivia talking about her medical school, and my parents praising her achievements, all faded as I stepped into the hallway. It was as if I had never existed in their world. My chest tightened, but I refused to let the tears fall. I couldn't show them any more weakness. The door clicked softly behind me as I stepped outside into the rain. The cool night air hitting my skin. It felt liberating, like I was stepping into a new life, one where I wasn't defined by my family's expectations, but by my own dreams. The sound of the rain echoed around me as I walked down the street, my backpack heavy on my shoulders. But my heart felt lighter with every step I took. I didn't know where I was going exactly, but I knew I had to keep moving. I had no money, no plan, but I had my music. That was all I needed. I had spent my entire life living in the shadow of my parents' dreams for me. Now, it was time to live for my own. The city lights of downtown Nashville twinkled in the distance. A place where I could start over. A place where I could find my own voice without anyone telling me I wasn't good enough. But even as I walked through the streets, I couldn't shake the feeling of abandonment. I had never wanted to leave my family, but they had left me first. They had closed the door on me long before I had walked out of it. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Eleanor, my old music teacher, who had always supported me. She had been like a second mother to me when I was younger. And even though I hadn't reached out in months, I knew she would help me. I just had to reach her. I typed, "I need to come to you. Can I stay at your place tonight?" The reply came swiftly, "Come over in the morning. Stay at a hotel tonight." I smiled faintly at the screen, a sense of warmth filling me. At least one person in this world believed in me. I had no idea what the future held, but in that moment, I made a vow to myself. I would prove my worth. Not to my family, not for their approval, but for me. I was going to build a life on my own terms, one note at a time. And this was only the beginning. Years passed, and I found myself standing on stage, under the bright lights, surrounded by the sound of applause. I had done it. My debut album had reached the charts. My music had touched millions of hearts. And I had built a life I was proud of. But it wasn't just about the success, it was about the journey. The journey of believing in myself when no one else did. My music became my voice. And every note I played was a reminder of everything I had overcome. My song, "A Worth," became an anthem for so many who, like me, had been told they weren't enough. I poured my heart into every performance. And with each show, I grew stronger, not just as a musician, but as a person. The recognition, the fame, it didn't matter as much as the quiet, personal victory of finding my own worth. Then, one night, I returned to Nashville, my hometown, a concert that was more than just a performance, it was a homecoming. The stage was set, and the crowd was buzzing with excitement. My eyes scanned the audience. And there they were. My family. They were there, in the crowd, just like they had always wanted. But now, I was in control of my own story. As I sang my final song, No Value, my gaze lingered on them. The words of the song. You said I had no value. But now the world is listening to my voice. Carried more weight than I ever thought they would. The applause echoed through the venue. But it wasn't the loud claps that mattered. It was the realization that I had found my voice and proven my worth, on my own terms. If there's one thing I learned, it's this. Value is not something given to you. It's something you create yourself. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories for more inspiring videos.